We invited Reggie Middleton, who first of all is just an amazing energy and personality himself. But most importantly, what he's going to do is he's going to draw us a layperson's roadmap to help us better understand the platform economics and how this is all going to affect us moving forward. So Reggie, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Where do you go from here?
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, first of all, can you hear me? I'm good? Okay, I was talking, so I missed the question. By a show of hands, who knows what Bitcoin is? Wow, it's a lot. So you know what it is or you've heard of it? Because I'm going to test you. The finance lawyer, what is Bitcoin?
I think it's a pseudocurrency.
Excuse me? A pseudocurrency? And who else raised their hand? Well, nobody raised their hand now that I'm going to test you, right? It's not a quiz. I just want to make sure everybody starts off at the same level. Okay, so I'll give you my definition of Bitcoin, but I want to make sure we're at the same level because we have some experts, we have some novices, and we have some people who just have no idea. So, nobody else? Cryptocurrency. And digital currency. So, I'm going to explain Bitcoin. Okay, and Bitcoin actually has very little to do with what I'm going to discuss, but I'm going to explain Bitcoin from my perspective. Bitcoin is a protocol-driven platform. Protocol meaning a set of instructions tells you what to do. Okay, it is literally the best thing since sliced bread, except for another protocol-driven platform that came into popularity about 25 years ago or so. Its protocol is called IP, Internet Protocol. Okay, and that's the internet. And what it is a platform that you can create applications on top of. One popular application was the World Wide Web, which is a graphical interface. So you could click a link, go to a website, and do all types of fantastic things. As a matter of fact, anybody who's under my age, which is very old, has not lived life or probably could not conduct normal activities without this protocol-driven platform. The internet touches each and every aspect of all of your lives. If there's anybody who disagrees with that, I'm curious, raise your hand. So that means the entire audience is in agreement that the internet drives the lifestyle of everybody here. Is that a valid assumption? Yes. Yes. Go ahead, speak. This is more of a conversation. So yes? No? Okay. So if we have, say, 20, 25 years into the future, another protocol-driven platform that is superior to the internet, is that a big thing? Help me out. Come on. Is that a big thing? You said yes? This man said no. He disagrees. Oh, yes. Okay, yes. So what makes this new protocol-driven platform better than the last one? Well, the last one was very large. Just take a look at what happened once this internet protocol took root. I'd say roughly around 1993, 1994 is when the nerds such as myself got into it. Okay, and that's when you had a lot of companies put money in. They had startups. AOL, which, does anybody know who AOL is now? Okay, it goes to show you, yes. First mover is not necessarily the most, is not necessarily the company that wins, but they do have an advantage. We have Comcast, I can't remember the names of it, Delphi, you have AOL. They came in, they flared up, they took a lot of market share from media companies, and then they fell. The second wave, such as Google's and Amazon's, came up, ran into an equity bubble. That equity bubble shot valuations up, made many billionaires, a lot of speculators made money, and then they fell off a cliff. Never heard of most of them, except the ones that survived happened to be the stalwarts of the Fortune 500. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at the Fortune 500 now, most of them came from that era of information technology. Before that era, you had things such as real estate, you had media. Media was a strong component. You had industrials. Right now, if you take a look at the Fortune 500, how many media moguls are they? I'd say zero, but I haven't checked, but close to none. Why? Because this internet-based protocol created ability to reduce friction, and people were able to do business, companies were able to do business without nearly the friction they had in the previous generation. That means you had companies such as media companies, the record labels, the music industry. you had a 75% drop in revenues and an even further drop in profits due to expanded margins. And companies such as Apple adopted these businesses, adopted this protocol, and basically took over. Was Apple a media company? Not even close. It was initially a computer company and then became a portable device company. They were able to do this and make massive amounts of money. Apple is the largest market capitalization American company in existence right now. They did this by embracing this new protocol. So, again, we fast forward. Let me step back on the cage. I'm going to jump off a lot. So we fast forward 25 years into the future. We have this new protocol. It is going through the exact same life cycle as the last one. The early adopters were nerds, okay? It got a lot of media attention, but the media attention, of course, is never positive, just like the early media attention from the internet. And, you know, child porn and drug dealers and Silk Road and all the negative things that come to fore was ran through the mainstream media. And the reason is, look at the mainstream media's business model. That business model is impressions and eyeballs, not necessarily portraying actionable fact, but getting as much advertising revenue as possible. So while they have that red herring going in one direction, there's a very small contingent of businesses that actually grasp the truth. And these businesses are taking advantage of the technology. That technology is called the blockchain. If you've heard of the blockchain, raise your hand quickly so I have an idea. Wow, an educated audience. What is the blockchain, sir?
It's a way of having secure transactions.
Yes, somewhat.
I would say it's an open protocol where every transaction can be verified.
Yes, he sounds like he's in the business. Anybody else? So you take those two, you merge them together. The blockchain is a very widely distributed, decentralized database, okay, in which you have miners, and a lot of people think of miners as guys with pickaxes and drills, but they're actually computer farms and computers that race to answer questions, and when they answer a complex question, they're rewarded with Bitcoin, if you're using the Bitcoin blockchain, and that reward incentivizes them to secure every transaction. So think of a brick wall, and I'm going to run quickly. So you take a brick, you put it down, you put mortar over it, you take another brick, put it down. Every brick is a transaction that's been verified by these computers. The computer that races, and wins the race, they get the answer, gets paid a Bitcoin. Once you have a bunch of bricks there, in order to invalidate that first brick, you have to use computer power to dig through all the other bricks and get to the first brick. That makes it financially, there's a strong financial disincentive to ever defraud because most entities couldn't afford it. You'd have to spend $500 million to invalidate a $30,000 transaction. It's usually not worth it. Okay, so that is one blockchain. But the blockchain itself is a database that can validate anything. You have Bitcoin, which is one protocol-based platform. You have Ethereum, which is another. You have Veritaseum, a very interesting company started by this tall, very, very good-looking young man. I was serious, but okay. These blockchains all have specific purposes. Bitcoin was the first. Okay, Bitcoin is the largest. Bitcoin right now has about a $69 billion market capitalization. Misleading term, but basically it's worth about $69 billion. Ethereum is worth about roughly, I'd say, $17 billion, depending on how you calculate it. Veritaseum, all tokens outstanding, is probably worth about $9 billion. Actual outstanding tokens, less than a quarter, about $2 billion or so, okay? Now, what makes Veritaseum different from many others is Veritaseum is not a technology. Veritasium is a solution to problems. We take financial analysts. I have a financial background. I'll go through my background in a minute, since I have to admit I failed at getting bio in, so I'll explain who I am. We have financial analysts who basically are the guys who say this company's worth that much, this sovereign entity is going to have a debt problem in 2019, this commodity will go up or down at a certain time. We have financial engineers who are entities who are people who basically solve problems. So if you want to create a stock that issues a dividend at a certain time, at a certain date, these guys fix it. We have computer programmers who make these programs, such as platforms, and we have computer engineers, software engineers. And the software engineers are people who design and architect things such as blockchains. We put them all together with fancy lawyers and we create and solve problems. Not create problems, I'm sorry, we solve problems. Now, one problem we solved, we went to a SME. a small and medium-sized enterprise. I'm sure you know that. This one is a little different. In the tiny island of Jamaica, which some consider a third world nation, but the definition is a little murky, there's an entity, a company, the Jamaica Stock Exchange. They do about $6.7 million of revenue as of last year, roughly $1.7 million of profit. So they're our first institutional client as a startup. What we are doing for them is we're bringing them into the digital currency blockchain age. And we're allowing them to use these decentralized blockchains to compete nationally. Right now, the Jamaica Stock Exchange's constituency is almost primarily Jamaican residents. Okay, most of the capital that goes in is mostly from Jamaica. By adopting this technology, they are able to transcend all geopolitical borders, all geographic borders, all socioeconomic borders. Anywhere that previous internet-based protocol reaches the internet, their clients can reach. So I asked a question about China, which is interesting because China is now arguably the second largest economic power in the world. Is that true, roughly, give or take? First, second, third, US, China, EU, somewhere around there. China has outlawed initial coin offerings, the ability to generate capital by selling tokens. They've outlawed Bitcoin. They've forced the Bitcoin exchanges where you buy and sell Bitcoin to shut down. Okay, they had a hard stop. The reason they did that is because, now I'm going to go a short macro class, macroeconomics. China is in rapid growth mode. They're in rapid growth mode because they are racing, and they're racing to beat the devaluation of their currency. So they're trying to get as much of their money out of the country as possible from a government control perspective. That's why China invests in so many other countries. Many small countries, Laos, Thailand, Pakistan, many countries in South and West Africa, in the Caribbean, you'll find massive Chinese investment. I don't know if you've ever done business there, but not only the massive Chinese investment, but in an imperialistic scale. Imperialism at a level that we haven't seen since the UK or the US. As a matter of fact, many of the countries that they invest in, they're demanding that Mandarin is spoken, such as Pakistan. They go into Jamaica, infrastructure projects, large amounts of capital, but Chinese workers come in. When Chinese workers come in, they get paid. That money goes where? Back to China. Very good for China. China is an economic force to be reckoned with. So what does the small island of Jamaica have to do with this? And the even smaller SME, Jamaica Stock Exchange? Well, this technology is enabling Jamaica to take capital outside of China and bring it into Jamaica by creating a digital asset exchange and trading any asset. So they can take an infrastructure project in Jamaica that may have been funded by China, may have been funded by some other source. They wrap it now with technology, they put it on the exchange, and they sell it to everybody. So you could type Facebook, FB, in a computer screen in Jamaica or anywhere else in the world. Let's take regulatory issues out the window. We're not going to discuss regulatory issues. Type FB, you get Facebook. Type MSFT, you get Microsoft. You could type JMO, you get the Jamaica Monorail Project. And you could actually buy tokens that were used to fund the Jamaica Monorail, assuming there was one. But there can't be one now because Jamaica can now fund their own infrastructure project. They can fund it by taking funds from where? Help me out. From where? Where? She's the only one that gets it. Where? China. Not just China. They take this capital from China. They can take capital from the US, from the UK, etc. Even more importantly, China had roughly at least 20% of the cryptocurrency market. It was very hot. One of the other reasons why China has closed it down. And they're closing it down because China has capital controls. Basically, they're putting gates around the country to make sure that they can control money coming in and out. Because the high net worth investors in China, want to get their money out of China before the currency falls, and that's why they invest abroad. Vancouver, real estate market, you see it going up. In the US, you go up to New York, you go to the Louis Vuitton store, you see a lot of Chinese customers, real estate, etc. So the Chinese government wants to invest, but they want to limit retail investment coming out of China. Now, when you shut down all these exchanges, that capital needs somewhere to go. It needs somewhere to go. Where does 20% of $136 billion go when you have a very small exchange with cutting-edge technology that's custom-made to take capital from the other parts of the world? Where could it go? Jamaica, thank you. Anybody follow me besides that? Jamaica, everybody? Yes? So 20% of $136 billion into a company that did $1.7 million of profit this time last year. Does that sound like a good deal? No. Which is bigger, 20% of $136 billion or $7 million? Okay, you're killing me. Okay, big amount of money, small amount of money. Which would you rather be? Okay, this one, right? Now, the Jamaica Stock Exchange is not a one-off deal. They're embracing technology, they're embracing a business model. Okay, it's very important that you understand the difference. Okay, technology has never ever put a company out of business. The internet is not the thing that pushed all the media moguls out of the Fortune 500. It never has, never will, never did. What pushed all the media moguls out of the Fortune 500? Does anybody know? Do you know?
The refusal to adapt to new technology.
I can't hear you.
The refusal to use and adapt to new technology.
That young man is right. It's the refusal to adapt to technology. Or from a more business perspective, it's the business model. Business models is what forces a paradigm shift to cause creative destruction. It causes the big companies to fall, which gives the smaller, more nimble companies with less capital, but more speed to adapt and grow. That's how Microsoft became one of the biggest companies in the world, had one of the richest men in the world, who spent more time on the Fortune 500 than almost anybody else. Microsoft went from a small startup. They took their capital from IBM because IBM didn't adapt. The technology didn't put them out. The change in the business model did. From the hardware-based revenue model, the IBM PC, to software. Microsoft ran supreme. You had Google, which disrupted many companies, many phone companies. Anybody remember BlackBerry, Research in Motion? Nokia? Okay, those companies are has-been. Anybody remember Delphi? What was Delphi? Excuse me? Cable? No. It's so bad nobody knows what they are. They were an internet access company. Okay? Again, the way of the dodo bird. Technology never put them in the grave. It's the business model change. So with that being said, Veritaseum takes its technology, it takes the financial analysis, and it takes the consulting savvy that helps you adapt your business model from going from one paradigm, once it shifts, to another. Now, I think this is relevant to the SME crowd or the SME field group because it's the small and medium-sized enterprises that lack the high friction, the culture that's restrictive, it's the SMEs, the small companies that lack the friction and the constrictive culture that prevent them from moving into the next paradigm. So low-hanging fruit from this period going forward would be the financial industry. The financial industry has always had a moat around them, regulation, and capital. Capital is a commodity, is easily attained and easily accessed by everybody except for those who really need it. And those who really need it have a problem getting access to capital. New business models, new technology can shove large swaths of capital into small and medium-sized enterprises. Okay, and this significantly shifts the landscape. Now, it's not that simple. You have regulatory issues. We have the needs and wants of governments that have capital controls and basically don't want this amount of capital to go that way. But if you take that out of the picture and out of discussion, and it's not realistic to take out of discussion, but those are also not hard stops either because you have a lot of companies that are doing a lot of things. Once you take that out of discussion, capital now flows freer. And it flows freer because of blockchain technology and the blockchain in general. And another technology called smart contracts. Smart contracts are, I'm going to ask the lawyer again because I like to pick on lawyers because you'll always pick on me. What's a smart contract?
What's a small contract?
Smart contract.
Smart contract?
Does anybody know what smart contract is?
Is this something like game theory, where if A and B occurs, then C? Something along those lines.
That's yes, but typical legal contract is very similar, and a social contract is. In other words, I want to buy a property, I want to buy a house. Okay, the contract says if I give you $500,000, I get the deed of the house, contingent upon clearance of title. So if A, then B, else C. The difference is A legal contract is usually a written agreement between one or two or more parties. A social contract is if you agree that I like you, we go out on a date, okay? A smart contract is either A or B, a legal contract or a social contract, but written as computer code that executes automatically and is self-enforcing and is put on the blockchain. Now, if the blockchain can't be corrupted and can't be hacked because of all those bricks that have been put in place, ran by hundreds of thousands of computers around the world, agreed upon by everybody, a consensus, 51%, well, then these contracts are ironclad and bulletproof. So now you could create a legal contract or a social contract written in computer code where everybody could potentially see the terms, so that takes malfeasance and the potential for fraud out. You can't break the contract because of all these bricks. It's a phenomenal way of doing things. Now, Peter, I'm assuming his name is Peter, it's not, but Peter can now do business with Paul. Paul can now do business with Sue Ann, and Sue Ann can do business with Patrick. They can do this business with each other without knowing each other, without being able to, having to vet them for physical fitness, for credit, for balance sheet wholeness, or anything else. The reason is these contracts can't be broken. Now, when you add this layer onto everything else, now you have a new fantastic way of doing things. So not only can you reach businesses from other countries and other states, I could do business in Laos with the same cost as doing business in Amherst from here. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't even know the difference. I could do that business crossing these geographic spans or geopolitical spans, not at the same cost, but at a much lesser cost and legacy way of doing things because I don't have to vet for fitness. There's no credit risk, there's no counterparty risk because Peter, Paul, Sue Ann, and Larry cannot break the contract. Now, does that sound cool? Yes. Yes. Is the founder of Veritaseum handsome? Yes. Yes, okay. I just want to make sure you're paying attention. Any questions thus far? Yes.
You know, I was out last night and trying to talk about, of course, the blockchain technology. One guy said to me, why would you want to get a smart contract when everybody would have access to it and know your business? They want to, where's the privacy issue? Is there any issue with privacy?
A lot of institutions who profit from privacy, like investment banks, bring that point up. There are two ways to look at it. Number one, a lot of businesses that profit from privacy use privacy, or other clients would call privacy opacity in pricing, to be able to shove a lot of profit into a deal that may not necessarily call for pricing that would give said profit. Fancy way of saying they overcharge you because you can't see what's going on. Okay? This transparency is a good thing for the users. But there are valid reasons where you want privacy. You can have privacy in smart contracts. Anybody who's ever used Bitcoin or Ethereum or Veritaseum knows you download it into electric software component, application called a wallet. That wallet has 26 alphanumeric characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't have your name. It doesn't say Paul Martin Jr. It's a string of characters. Nobody knows who owns these characters. Nobody knows if it's Paul Martin or if it's Betsy the poodle. Okay, when you send capital or assets from your address to the other address, you can see it go through the blockchain, but you can't identify it. If that capital is now twinged through a smart contract to represent 5-year cash flows from this building, and is trading for another contract that represents deed or title to the Empire State Building, you don't know that. Okay, so there's privacy. I see you, 1 second. There's privacy right there in pseudonymity, which is not anonymity, which a lot of people thought, and the criminals who use Bitcoin for criminal means who got in trouble realize that Bitcoin is not anonymous, it's pseudonymous. Now, if you need even more privacy, there are privacy layers that you could turn on. And the privacy layers basically prevent you from even seeing that pseudonymous layer by going through a bunch of changes that basically mix and match everything, so you have no idea where it came from or where it went to. Yes, did I answer your question, first of all? Miss, that's a yes. Okay, did I answer your question?
Okay, so when I've looked at blockchain, there are various issues. One is what I would say at the operational layer, its stage of development, whether it's fit for purpose, whether all the kinks have been worked out, that kind of thing. We know that there are hundreds of millions of dollars being put into blockchain development by very large financial institutions and all that stuff. And then there's the regulatory aspect, the overlay, because blockchain, in a sense, represents a threat at the regulatory level from perspective of money laundering and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I heard, I think what I heard you describing was what I would call a blockchain nirvana in a perfect world where there were no regulators, where there were no tax authorities, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Right.
Because technologically, it works.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think there's maybe a Forex issue, okay, in terms of multi-currencies in blockchain. So
Okay, let's go. Your question is getting a little compounded. I want to address everything, but you know, too many layers and I get confused. Let's start with the first one. What was the first part of the question? Do you mind if I address this question, everybody? No, yes?
What's the stage of it? I don't yet see blockchain being deployed as primary platforms in, say, the international banking system.
Okay. Here's a trick question. Why not?
Well,
The short answer, why not?
I think at the operational layer, what I'll call the operational layer, whether all the kinks have been worked out such that they could be deployed in a, let's call it, like, for example, in an international banking settlement process.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there.
When a company in Jamaica settles with a company in China, it still has to go through the banking system.
No, it doesn't. That's you answered your own question right there. Oh, let me explain. Okay. Okay, so the premise of the blockchain, peer-to-peer capital markets. That's Veritaseum's modus operandi. Peer-to-peer capital markets. Currently, the legacy system explains capital markets like this. You have a hub, the central bank, Federal Reserve. You have spokes around the hub, money center banks, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Citibank, Morgan Stanley, blah, blah, blah. Around them, you have national banks, PNC, et cetera, then regional banks, then mom and pops, right, ATMs on the corner, et cetera, right? Every time you do a transaction, right, this very handsome young man, who has the beautiful father, has to go through the center hub, right, in order to do business with this guy, despite the fact they are 15 feet apart.
Right.
Okay? That inefficiency, that friction, is solved by eliminating the middleman, which is the Central Reserve. The Federal Reserve, okay, the central bank. So your question is premised upon them needing to go through the central bank to do the transactions, and if all the kinks aren't worked out, to forcibly go through a third party that wasn't necessary, there's a problem. But the premise is, if they could do a true peer-to-peer transaction over the counter, if he can take money or something, because I don't have any money, if he could take this piece of paper, which is actually called a Federal Reserve note, some people call it $20, right, which is actually just paper, but is backed as fiat in full faith in the government. If he could take this out of pocket and give it to him directly, why would he go through the Federal Reserve, the money center banks, and other third parties? Not a rhetorical question, an actual question.
Well, there are many reasons why people would want to keep their money in the bank as opposed to...
No, but that wasn't the question. In the transfer, if he wanted to give $20 to him, here, we'll walk it through. Here's $20. You have two choices. You could go give it to him, or you could give it to the guy in the back, pay the guy in the back to give it to the guy in the corner, pay that guy in the corner to give it to her, and then give it to him. How many?
So, in the interest of, we promised to vacate this building by 5 o'clock.
Okay.
It sounds like that's a much longer
Oh.
conversation than I expected having offline. So, Reggie.
We done? Okay, so I intended to have this more of a conversation, okay, but he asked three very strong questions, which I wanted to get through. So we're in the beginning of getting through one question.
1 minute.
1 minute. So I'll answer the question for him. He has two choices. He can go and give this to that guy and pay a half a penny in transaction costs, or he could give it to you and pay you to give it to him and pay him to give it to her, pay her to give it to him, and then he can go and give it to him, and you lose roughly, 75 basis points to $1 in the transaction cost, just giving nominal figures out. Those are your two choices, okay? Your question was premised upon going around the room, letting everybody get a piece of it with the assumption. So he's saying no, but I don't have the time to go through it. But as you can tell, I love to talk, right? So afterwards, let's have it, okay? Thank you very much. It's mine, right? Okay, how you doing? Okay.
It's an awesome conversation.
Well, thank you.
It's one that really is kind of changing the way we think about financial transactions and the way we're all going to be moving forward. So
Yes.
I know it's one that we can engage in for a while, so hopefully you guys can be doing that. I did promise Harvard that we would be out of here by 5, so let's everybody gather together, chat a little bit, work your way, and I will be the voice of God. Oh, wait, we can't use that. Just basically saying thank you so much for being a part of
Okay, no problem.
today. I know
You're
a lot of information was shared. It was a fascinating experience for me, hopefully for you as well. I want to thank Brett Bruins.
I've got questions too.
Oh, okay.
For having
Oh,
a vision
no problem.
to
Yeah, good question. Did it work?
the next
You recorded both of them?